let me tell you a story about video games and the media. A violent game provokes outrage in the press. The game, reminiscent of a cult exploitation movie, awards points for running over pedestrians. News reports shock the public with lurid descriptions of gameplay. Experts denounce the game, there are international calls for a ban, but in the end, the company that created it reaped the profits of their newfound notoriety. But this video isn't about Carmageddon. It's about a game that was released more than 2 decades earlier, about the first time a video game caused a moral panic and how the echoes of that event lasted for decades. America, the mid-70s, the arcade boom. Among the companies producing the cabinets finding their way into arcades, cafes, bowling alleys and laundromats across the country was Exidy. Based in the Bay Area, they'd made a few different machines, but had no big hits to their name. One of the games they developed was Destruction Derby, a cabinet where players scored points by crashing into other cars. They licensed the game to a third party, Chicago Coin, but when payment didn't materialise, it looked like the project was a write-off. So the company formulated a plan B. With a small amount of work, they could turn Destruction Derby into a new machine they could sell directly to customers, and this new game would capitalise on players' familiarity with the recent infamous B-movie. The previous year, Roger Corman had produced the low-budget exploitation flick Death Race 2000, a story of drivers racing across a dystopian America in a sporting event, mowing down pedestrians for points. The movie earned a cult following with its tongue-in-cheek violence and gore. Whether inspired by the movie or, as they claimed, by coincidence, Exidy got to work adapting Destruction Derby.
It's very hard to change the gameplay when a game is done in hard logic, but to just change the images, that's not so hard. It was a very early use of prongs, and I realized I could change the cars to people. When they get run over, well, I can't have a dead body, but how about just a cross? That's how Death Race was born.
The game's display was pretty standard for 1976, low resolution and monochrome, but the colourful, eye-catching cabinet covered in Grim Reapers and gravestones certainly wasn't. With new art, new sprites and a new title, Exidy had a fresh addition to their catalogue. The game was released in April 1976. Reaction was initially subdued, but 3 months later, the controversy began. First, an AP reporter stumbled upon children playing the game in a shopping mall and wrote an article that was syndicated in newspapers across the country. A critical opinion piece in the magazine of the National Safety Council, a health and safety advocacy organisation, prompted a second round of newspaper coverage. Newsweek, NBC News, Playboy, even international publicity. Many of these articles featured similar elements. Exaggerated descriptions of the content of the game, quotes from a psychologist or other expert about its effects on the brain, slippery slope arguments, fears of terrible consequences, and a lot of hyperbole. According to the National Safety Council, for instance, the game didn't just involve running people over, it taught motorists how to do it. It planted the seed of disrespect for life in all forms. They even claimed Death Race was not a game. Sadly, history doesn't record what they thought it was. Death Race had gone from an obscure arcade game to a topic on the evening news. Petitions were signed. Arcades pulled the machine from the floor, and at least one distributor stopped carrying it. Politicians issued overwrought condemnations.
A perverted, so-called entertainment which glorifies the hit-and-run accident, and the most heinous form of pornography one can level against the younger, impressionable citizens who are likely to play these kinds of games.
Criticism even came from figures within the games industry, such as Atari's Nolan Bushnell.
We were really unhappy with that game. We had an internal rule that we wouldn't allow violence against people. You could blow up a tank, or you could blow up a flying saucer, but you couldn't blow up people. We felt that was not good form, and we adhered to that all during my tenure.
Okay, not that it really matters, but that wasn't entirely true. Exidy leaned into the controversy, making 2 defences that did little to appease their critics. First, it's just for fun. Second, the reports were wrong. The stick figures in the game weren't humans, they were gremlins. Sure, they looked kinda like people, screamed kinda like people, and the game shared its name with a movie about running over people. but the pre-release advertising, manual, and cabinet decals all called them Gremlins. It was all just a big misunderstanding. The effect of all this coverage was a spike in sales.
We had only released 200 games, but after the notoriety, we ended up making around 3,000. It was a story that just wouldn't die, and Exidy laughed all the way to the bank.
The games industry had discovered that controversy was good for business. The publicity brought more customers, those who were most upset weren't going to play it anyway, and existing players didn't see what the fuss was about.
Bo Weiler, a Death Race devotee, shrugged off the possibility of acquiring violent tendencies from the game. "That's stupid, and besides, I don't even know how to drive," said Weiler, age 13.
Debates over violence in games still happen today, but we seldom see the level of hysteria we did in the 70s, 80s and 90s. Age ratings and a broad acceptance of gaming as an adult pastime avoided some of the talking points, and at least in the West, trial by tabloid has mostly been replaced with a more informed conversation. But for many years, violence in games was a topic of intense and sometimes absurd public debate. This was the story of Death Race, the first video game to cause a moral panic. But change a few details, and it could be the story of Carmageddon, or Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat, or Manhunt, Night Trap, or Doom. They all played out the same. Appeals to the innocence of youth, opinions without first-hand knowledge, hyperbolic criticism, grandstanding politicians, publishers arguing that it's just a game, and the controversy being great news for sales. All of it was there from the start. It looks so tame now that the reaction it generated seems overblown, even ridiculous, but Death Race provided the template for media coverage of a violent game. Hi, this is Chris, and I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to help me make more, please share the link with anyone you know who you think might appreciate it. I'm a small-time hobbyist, I don't have a big social media reach, so getting the word out is invaluable and will genuinely help me tell more stories from video game history. I truly appreciate your help on this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in the past.